The massive space station Harmony glowed like a jewel against the black canvas of space. Its curved metal arms stretched outward, housing representatives from over 200 worlds gathered for the Galactic Council's centennial celebration. 500 years of supposed peace deserved a grand party after all. Ambassador Thomas adjusted his formal uniform as he stared out the viewport of his small shuttle. Unlike the ornate vessels of other species that sparkled with precious metals and exotic materials, the Earth shuttle was plain and functional. Much like humanity's standing in the galaxy, practical, unassuming, and largely overlooked. Earth Shuttle E-12, you are cleared for docking Bay 47, came the bored voice of the traffic controller. Please note this is in the auxiliary section, as primary bays are reserved for full council members. Thomas bit back a sigh. Understood, Harmony Control. Proceeding to Bay 47. As the shuttle docked with a metallic clunk, Thomas gathered his meager diplomatic materials. He knew his invitation had been a mere formality. In the century since humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel and joined the galactic community, they had been treated as little more than curious primitives from a backwater planet. The docking bay was nearly empty when he stepped out. No welcoming committee, not even a guide droid. Just a blinking terminal with directions to the secondary representatives' quarters. Thomas squared his shoulders and began walking. The halls of Harmony grew more elaborate as he approached the central hub. Gleaming walls displayed holographic art from 100 worlds. Gravity adjusters allowed species from high and low gravity planets to move comfortably in the same spaces. Atmosphere barriers separated areas for methane breathers from those who required oxygen. Ah, the human has arrived, said a tall, willowy alien with iridescent skin as Thomas entered the main gathering area. Ambassador Linth of the Arbolian Collective looked down at Thomas from his 9-foot height. How quaint that you made it. I trust your primitive vessel managed the journey without complications. Our primitive technology served us well. Thank you, Thomas replied with practiced diplomacy. He had faced such condescension for years. The Grand Hall was filling with representatives from across the galaxy. Floating orbs carried drinks and delicacies suited to different biologies. A group of crystalline beings communicated through light pulses. Massive reptilian diplomats conversed with tiny insectoid delegates through translation devices. Thomas noted how species naturally clustered with their allies and trade partners. Earth stood alone, having never been fully accepted into any of the major alliances. High Elder Krell, the council president, floated to the center of the room. His gelatinous form shimmered with bioluminescent patterns as he raised 4 tentacle-like appendages for silence. Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Council, Krell's voice boomed through translation devices. We gather to celebrate 5 centuries of enlightened cooperation. 500 cycles of trade, cultural exchange, and shared prosperity. Applause and various sounds of approval filled the hall. Thomas clapped politely, though he knew Earth had seen little of this shared prosperity. When our ancestors formed this council, Krell continued, they envisioned a galaxy united in purpose. We have fulfilled that vision, even welcoming developing species. His gaze briefly passed over Thomas, into our community, guiding them toward proper civilization. More applause. Thomas maintained his diplomatic smile while inwardly grimacing. As Krell launched into a detailed history of the Council's accomplishments, Thomas's personal communicator vibrated against his wrist. A priority message from Earth Command. He discreetly checked the screen. The message contained only 3 words. They are coming. Before Thomas could react, the station's alarms began to blare. The pleasant chatter of the assembly transformed into confused murmurs. A massive holographic display appeared in the center of the hall, showing a transmission. Admiral James of Earth's Defense Fleet appeared on screen, his face grim. Galactic Council. This is Earth Command. We've detected multiple unidentified vessels approaching your location at high speed. They match no known signatures and are not responding to hails. We strongly advise immediate evacuation procedures. High Elder Krell moved forward, irritation clear in his pulsing colors. What is the meaning of this interruption? Humans, and they're dramatic. The transmission cut off abruptly as the entire station shuddered. The celebration had just begun, and so had the terror. The grand hall erupted into chaos as the space station harmony shook again. The elegant floating orbs that had been serving drinks crashed to the floor. Ambassador Thomas steadied himself against a wall as the artificial gravity fluctuated. "This is merely a technical malfunction," High Elder Krell announced, his gelatinous form rippling with agitation. "There is no cause for alarm. The human transmission is nothing but an attempt to disrupt our celebration." Thomas tried to re-establish contact with Earth Command, but the communication channels were jammed. Around him, the alien delegates whispered and gestured nervously. Some were already moving toward their private vessels. "Ambassador Thomas," a voice called. Thomas turned to see Ambassador Linth approaching, his previous arrogance replaced by visible concern. "What did your admiral mean? What vessels are approaching?" "If you'd allow me to explain to the council," Thomas began, but was cut off by Krell's booming voice. "Attention. Security reports this is merely a sensor malfunction. The celebration will continue as planned. I will not allow human paranoia to tarnish our historic gathering." The station's massive view screens flickered back to life. Admiral James appeared once more, his image distorted by static. "This is not a drill or a malfunction," he insisted. "Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Network detected these vessels 3 months ago. We sent 17 warnings to the Council, all of which were ignored or dismissed." Thomas felt a cold shock run through him. 3 months. He had received no information about these warnings. As Earth's ambassador, he should have been informed immediately. The Admiral continued. "The vessels match no known configuration, but bear similarities to artifacts found in the ruins of the Centauri system. The same system that was mysteriously devastated 2 centuries ago." High Elder Krell slithered forward, his colors pulsing angrily. "Cut this transmission at once. Earth has no authority to." "They're targeting your defense systems first," James interrupted. "Your shielding will fail in approximately 8 minutes. Earth vessels are en route." "But..." The screen went dark as Krell personally terminated the connection. "This human deception will be addressed formally after our celebration," Krell announced. "Such fear-mongering is exactly why primitive species must be carefully monitored before receiving full council privileges." A memory flashed through Thomas's mind. 6 years ago, when Earth requested permission to expand its defensive fleet after detecting unusual energy signatures at the edge of their system. The Council had not only denied the request, but placed restrictions on human military development, claiming it would destabilize regional security. The station shuddered a third time, more violently than before. This time, the emergency lights activated, bathing the hall in a pulsing red glow. A frantic council aide rushed to Krell, whispering urgently. The High Elder's bioluminescent patterns shifted to a pale blue, a sign of shock among his species. "Though the defense grid has been compromised," Krell admitted reluctantly, "but our security forces are responding. Please remain calm." Thomas's communicator suddenly came back online, displaying a classified message from Earth's secure channel. It contained sensor readings and tactical data, information that should have been shared with the Council months ago. He quickly scrolled through the file, his face growing paler with each swipe. Earth had been monitoring the approaching threat since their long-range probes detected unusual gravitational disturbances near the ancient ruins in the Centauri system. The Council had dismissed these findings as insufficient evidence and technological error. Across the hall, Thomas noticed several high-ranking council members quietly slipping away toward the private docking bays. They knew something was wrong, despite Krell's reassurances. A deafening alarm blared throughout the station, followed by an automated announcement. "Attention all personnel and guests. Unidentified vessels have breached the outer defense perimeter. This is not a drill. Proceed to emergency shelters immediately." The celebration dissolved completely as delegates rushed toward exits. Shouts and cries in dozens of languages filled the air. Ambassador Thomas pushed against the tide of panicking aliens, trying to reach the communication hub. If what Admiral James said was true, the Council needed to know everything Earth had discovered about these mysterious vessels. A final, powerful explosion rocked the station, sending Thomas and dozens of other delegates tumbling to the floor. The lights flickered and died, plunging the Grand Hall into darkness. In that moment of pitch blackness, Thomas realized the warning had come too late, not because Earth had failed to send it, but because the Council had refused to listen. Emergency lighting bathed the Grand Hall in an eerie red glow as Ambassador Thomas pulled himself up from the floor. The station's artificial gravity wavered, causing smaller aliens to float momentarily before crashing back down. Panic had fully consumed the once dignified gathering. "All delegates to emergency shelters," announced a mechanical voice through the station speakers. "Unknown vessels have breached Harmony's outer defense ring. This is not a drill." Through the massive viewport that dominated one wall of the hall, Thomas saw them for the first time. 3 enormous ships, each at least twice the size of the largest Council vessels, approached Harmony Station. Their hulls were midnight black, absorbing rather than reflecting the light of the nearby sun, giving them a disturbing void-like appearance. The only visible features were pulsing red lines that ran across their surfaces like blood vessels. "The Void Collective," Thomas whispered, recognizing the ships from the classified reports he had just received. Earth's intelligence had pieced together this name from scattered records found in the ruins of extinct civilizations. The station's defense fleet mobilized, small compared to the approaching behemoths. Sleek Council ships, representing the supposed technological superiority of the Galactic Alliance, moved to intercept the intruders. The Council's military commander, General Vex, stood at the tactical display, surrounded by his officers. Defensive Pattern Omega. All ships focus fire on the lead vessel. Thomas watched as dozens of energy beams struck the lead ship of the Void Collective. The weapons, capable of destroying small moons, seemed to dissipate harmlessly against some kind of energy field. "Impossible." General Vex slammed his fist on the console. "Increase power to maximum." The second volley proved equally ineffective. Then, without warning, the lead ship of the Void Collective emitted a pulse of crimson energy. The wave passed through the Council defense fleet, and one by one, the ships simply powered down, drifting lifelessly in space. They didn't destroy them, Thomas realized aloud. They disabled them. The main communication screen flickered to life. The image showed a being unlike any Thomas had ever seen. Its form seemed to shift and change, as if it existed in multiple states simultaneously. When it spoke, the voice resonated painfully in the minds of everyone present rather than through the speakers. "We are the Void. Your efexized TNC is AC King MOWLEG. Your resistance is ARRELEVANT. Your resources will be harvested. Your GNOWLEG will be absorbed." High Elder Krell floated forward, his gelatinous form trembling slightly. "We are the Galactic Council, representing over 200 peaceful civilizations. We welcome communication and your welcome is unnecessary. Your council is meaningless. You will be melite or be erased." The transmission cut off abruptly. In the sudden silence, Thomas noticed several council members rushing toward the private docking bays. "The leadership is abandoning the station," Thomas said to no one in particular, disgust evident in his voice. A hand gripped his shoulder. He turned to see Ambassador Linth, the arrogant Arbolian who had mocked him earlier. "Human," Linth said, his voice stripped of its previous condescension. "Your admiral mentioned Earth vessels were en route. Is this true? Will they help us?" Before Thomas could answer, another explosion rocked the station. The viewport cracked but held, its transparent metal designed to withstand immense pressure. "They're boarding the station," someone shouted. The lower levels have been breached. Security feeds showed tall, armored figures moving through the corridors of Harmony's lower decks. Their forms seemed to flicker in and out of visibility, as if they weren't fully present in this reality. High Elder Krell, who had been attempting to access his private escape pod, now returned to the command center, his colors pulsing with fear. "Activate the automated defense systems. Seal all bulkheads," he ordered. "It's too late," General Vex replied grimly. "They've already overridden our systems." The station's long-range sensors suddenly pinged with new alerts. Thomas rushed to a monitor, hoping to see Earth's promised reinforcements. The readings confused him at first. These weren't the usual Earth military vessels he was familiar with. "More ships approaching," announced the station's eye. "Unknown configuration, not matching any Council registry." The new arrivals were massive, rivaling the Void Collective ships in size. Their hulls were dark gray with blue energy signatures pulsing along their sides. As they drew closer, Thomas finally made out the insignia on their hulls, the emblem of Earth's defense fleet, but surrounding ships unlike any he'd ever seen before. "Earth's Dreadnoughts," he whispered in disbelief. The celebration had turned to terror as the Void Collective attacked. But now, that terror was about to be redirected, as Earth's secret fleet revealed itself to the galaxy. The command center of Harmony Station fell silent as the massive Earth vessels appeared on the view screens. 7 enormous warships, each nearly as large as the Void Collective vessels, moved into formation at the edge of the system. Their hulls were sleek but intimidating, covered in what appeared to be heavily armored plating with glowing blue energy lines pulsing across their surfaces. What are those?" High Elder Krell's voice trembled, his gelatinous form rippling with confusion. Ambassador Thomas stared at the screen in equal shock. As Earth's representative, he should have known about these ships. Yet here they were, a fleet that must have taken decades to build in secret. "The lead ship is hailing us," announced the communications officer, her tentacles working frantically across the control panel. The main screen flickered, and a stern-faced human woman appeared. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly, and the uniform she wore bore the insignia of Earth's defense fleet, but with additional markings Thomas didn't recognize. "This is Admiral Diana of the Earth defense vessel Thermopylae," she announced, her voice calm but commanding. "Harmony Station, we are here to assist. Prepare to receive boarding teams to help evacuate civilians." High Elder Krell pushed forward. "Admiral of Earth, explain these warships immediately. The Council never approved." "With respect, High Elder," Admiral Diana interrupted, "we don't have time for politics. The Void Collective has already boarded your station and disabled your fleet. My primary concern is saving lives." She turned her attention to someone off-screen. "Commander Marcus, prepare boarding teams. Priority is civilian evacuation and securing the Council leadership." Thomas stepped forward. "Admiral, Ambassador Thomas here. I had no knowledge of." "I understand, Ambassador," Diana nodded. "You weren't briefed on the Dreadnought program." "Few were. It was classified at the highest levels after the Council rejected our warnings." The station shuddered again as another explosion rocked the lower levels. The security feeds showed the Void Collective forces advancing rapidly through Harmony's decks. "They'll reach the central hub in 10 minutes, General Vex reported grimly. On the view screen, Admiral Diana turned to her tactical display. "All ships, engage the Void vessels. Focus fire on their propulsion systems. We need to prevent them from leaving with intelligence about our capabilities." Thomas watched in awe as Earth's dreadnoughts moved with surprising speed for vessels of their size. They split into a perfect formation, surrounding the 3 void ships. Bright blue energy beams lanced out from multiple points on each Earth vessel, striking the void ships precisely. Unlike the Council weapons, these beams seemed to partially penetrate the void ship's defenses. The lead void vessel shuddered visibly as several beams struck its engines. "How is this possible?" Ambassador Linth whispered beside Thomas. Your species was barely spacefaring a century ago. A memory suddenly clicked into place in Thomas's mind. Over the past decades, Earth had requested permission to mine resources from several uninhabited systems. The Council had granted these requests, assuming humans merely needed basic materials for their growing colonies. No one had questioned why Earth needed so much titanium, palladium, and rare elements, or why they were extracting so much deuterium. They had been building this fleet all along. The station rocked again as a group of Void soldiers blasted through another bulkhead. The security feed showed them advancing relentlessly, their weapons cutting through Harmony's defenses like paper. All non-essential personnel to evacuation points. General Vex ordered security teams to fall back to defensive positions around the central hub. Outside, the space battle intensified. 2 Earth dreadnoughts coordinated their fire on the smallest Void vessel, targeting what appeared to be its weapons systems. The black ship tried to maneuver away, but was caught in some kind of energy net projected by a 3rd Earth vessel. "Admiral," Thomas called out to the screen. "The Void forces are about to breach the central hub. We have civilians trapped here." Diana nodded sharply. "Thermopylae is docking at Emergency Port 6. Commander Marcus is leading the extraction team personally. Get your people there." As if on cue, the station's sensors detected a smaller Earth vessel attaching to one of Harmony's emergency docks. How did Earth build such ships without the Council knowing? High Elder Krell demanded, his earlier fear giving way to indignation. Thomas turned to face the Council leader, a new understanding dawning on him. "Because you never bothered to really look at us, did you? You saw what you wanted to see, a primitive species barely worth noticing. Meanwhile, we were preparing for exactly this day." The doors to the command center hissed open. A team of heavily armored humans rushed in, weapons ready. Their leader, a tall man with a determined expression, stepped forward. "Commander Marcus, Earth Defense Fleet," he announced. "We're here to get you out." Commander Marcus and his team moved with practiced efficiency through the command center. His soldiers secured the entrances while he approached Ambassador Thomas and the Council leaders. "We need to move now," Marcus said, his voice urgent but controlled. "The Void forces will breach this level in less than 5 minutes." High Elder Krell wobbled indignantly. "I demand to know how Earth built these warships without Council approval. This violates 17 different treaties." Marcus ignored the gelatinous leader, turning instead to Thomas. "Ambassador, we need your help organizing the evacuation. The civilian delegates trust you." Thomas nodded and began gathering the frightened representatives. Outside the viewports, the space battle raged with increasing intensity. Earth's dreadnoughts had formed a protective barrier between the station and the Void ships. Their massive hulls absorbed punishing hits that would have destroyed smaller vessels instantly. "The Thermopylae's docking tubes extended at Emergency Port 6, Marcus explained as he led the group through the corridors. "We can evacuate 200 at a time." A thunderous explosion shook the passageway ahead of them. The lights flickered and emergency barriers began to drop. Marcus raised his hand, signaling his team to halt. "Void forces ahead," he whispered, checking a display on his wrist. "At least 12 of them." Thomas watched as Marcus's team readied strange weapons he'd never seen before, not the standard energy rifles used by Earth's regular military, but something far more advanced. "Ambassador, get everyone back 50 meters and prepare to run when I give the signal," Marcus ordered. Before Thomas could respond, the far wall exploded inward. Through the smoke and debris stepped 3 Void soldiers. Their armor seemed to shift and flow like liquid shadow, making it hard to focus on them directly. Marcus's team fired simultaneously. Their weapons unleashed not energy beams, but pulses of blue light that seemed to distort the air itself. When these pulses struck the Void soldiers, their shifting armor briefly solidified before cracking like glass. "Quantum destabilizers," Marcus explained, seeing Thomas's confused expression. "Developed after studying artifacts from previous civilizations they destroyed. forces their phase-shifting technology to pick a state. More Void soldiers poured through the breach, but now they moved more cautiously, firing back with weapons that left strange, dimension-warping distortions in the walls. Now, Marcus shouted to his team, "Push forward. Create the corridor." His soldiers advanced in perfect coordination, their specialized weapons forcing the Void soldiers to retreat. Thomas marveled at their discipline and the effectiveness of their tactics against an enemy that had effortlessly disabled the Council's finest ships. "Ambassador, bring your group now," Marcus called back. "Stay in the center of our formation." Thomas led the Council members and other delegates forward, keeping them tightly grouped as they passed through the contested area. The air smelled of ozone and something stranger, like reality itself, was burning around them. Through the nearest viewport, Thomas caught glimpses of the battle outside. One of the Void vessels was clearly damaged, dark smoke pouring from multiple breaches in its hull. 2 Earth Dreadnoughts circled it methodically, continuing to target its propulsion systems. "Admiral Diana is keeping them occupied," Marcus said, noticing Thomas's gaze. "Her orders are to prevent them from escaping with information about us." "About you?" Ambassador Linth asked, his earlier arrogance completely gone. "What do you mean?" Marcus exchanged a quick look with Thomas. "They don't know what humanity really is yet, and we'd prefer to keep it that way for now." They reached Emergency Port 6, where the docking tube from the Thermopylae connected to the station. Earth soldiers were already organizing the flow of refugees, prioritizing the injured and those from vulnerable species. "We can't fit everyone," Thomas realized, looking at the hundreds of delegates and station personnel crowded into the area. "The Thermopylae isn't our only ship," Marcus replied with a grim smile. "Admiral Diana brought our entire First Fleet." A massive explosion echoed through the station, powerful enough to make the artificial gravity flicker momentarily. On a nearby monitor, Thomas saw that one of the Void ships had collided with a Council defense platform, tearing it apart. "They're getting desperate," Marcus observed. "That's good. It means they're afraid." Thomas looked at him in surprise. "Afraid? Of us?" "They should be," Marcus said simply. "They've destroyed dozens of civilizations before, but they've never encountered humans." He checked his weapon and turned back to the corridor they had just secured. "I need to go back for more survivors. Get these people aboard and prepare for departure." As Marcus and half his team headed back into danger, Thomas couldn't help but wonder what else Earth had been hiding all these years. The primitive species that the Council had dismissed for so long was now all that stood between them and extinction. The command bridge of the Thermopylae hummed with controlled urgency as Ambassador Thomas watched the battle unfold on the main display. Admiral Diana stood at the center, issuing orders with calm precision despite the chaos surrounding them. "Dreadnought Leonidas, reinforce your starboard shields." "Dreadnought Marathon, target the lead Void vessel's command section," she commanded, her voice steady. Thomas had never seen such coordination between military vessels. The Earth ships moved as one organism, covering each other's vulnerabilities while exploiting the enemy's weaknesses. It was beautiful and terrifying. "Status report on Harmony Station," Diana asked, turning to a communications officer. "Commander Marcus reports 60% of civilians evacuated. The Void forces have secured the lower 30 levels, but are meeting heavy resistance from our teams on the residential decks." Diana nodded grimly. "They're buying us time. We need to make it count." A sudden alert blared through the bridge. On the tactical display, the largest Void ship began to move away from the battle, its engines glowing with increasing intensity. "Admiral," called out the sensor officer, "the Void flagship is preparing for a jump. Energy signatures indicate they're powering up their faster-than-light drive." Diana's expression hardened. "They're running with what they've learned. We can't allow that." She studied the tactical display for a brief moment before making her decision. "All ships except Thermopylae continue evacuation support. Thermopylae will pursue the flagship." The tactical officer looked up in alarm. Admiral, pursuing alone would put us at extreme risk. Our simulations indicate. I'm aware of the projections, Diana cut him off. But if that ship escapes with data on our capabilities, they'll return with a fleet we can't hope to defeat. Thomas stepped forward. Admiral, as Earth's representative, I should. Stay here and complete the evacuation, Diana finished for him. The Council needs to understand what they're facing, Ambassador. Make sure they do. Before Thomas could protest further, Diana issued new orders. All hands, prepare for intercept maneuver. Divert power from non-essential systems to engines and forward shields. The Thermopylae broke formation, accelerating rapidly toward the retreating Void flagship. The massive Earth vessel, already bearing damage from the battle, pushed its engines beyond safe limits. The hull creaked audibly as it strained under the stress. On the display, Thomas watched the distance between the ships decrease. The Void vessel fired defensive weapons, dark energy pulses that rippled through space itself. The Thermopylae took multiple hits but continued its pursuit relentlessly. They'll never catch it in time, High Elder Krell said, his gelatinous form quivering with fear as he watched from beside Thomas. Thomas wasn't so sure. There was a determined set to Diana's jaw as she studied the tactical displays. She was planning something. All power to forward momentum. Diana ordered. Prepare the gravity well projector. Admiral, the projector isn't designed for offensive use, her second-in-command protested. The strain could tear us apart. It's our only option, Diana replied. Execute now. The Thermopylae surged forward, closing the final distance to the Void flagship. A massive energy spike registered on the monitors as the Earth vessel activated some kind of experimental technology. Space itself seemed to warp between the two ships. The Void flagship suddenly slowed, caught in what appeared to be an artificial gravity well. Its FTL drive flickered and failed as the distortion prevented its escape. We've got them, Diana announced. Weapons, target their data core. Maximum yield. The Thermopylae fired its main weapons directly into the now vulnerable Void vessel. The shots struck with surgical precision, causing secondary explosions throughout the enemy ship. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Red warning lights flashed across the Thermopylae's bridge as systems began to fail. The gravity well projector, never meant to be used as a weapon, was tearing the Earth vessel apart from within. Admiral, structural integrity failing. Engine core destabilizing, shouted the engineering officer. Diana's face remained calm as she opened a channel to the evacuation fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Diana. The Void flagship has been neutralized. Their data core is destroyed. Continue evacuation procedures. She paused, then added more softly. It's been an honor serving with you all. As the channel closed, Thomas realized what was happening. Diana had sacrificed her ship, and herself, to prevent the Void from escaping with vital intelligence about Earth's true capabilities. The remaining Earth Dreadnoughts intensified their attack on the two other Void vessels, which were now attempting to retreat. Without their flagship, they seemed disorganized, their earlier precision fading. High Elder Krell floated next to Thomas, watching as the Thermopylae's lights flickered and died, the great ship drifting lifelessly in space alongside its defeated enemy. Your Admiral, Krell began, his voice unusually subdued. She knew she wouldn't survive. Yes, Thomas replied simply. And so did her crew. The price of victory was terribly high. But Thomas knew it was just the beginning of what humanity was prepared to sacrifice. 1 week after the battle, the emergency council session convened aboard the Earth Dreadnought Marathon. The ship's massive conference room, originally designed for military planning, now hosted representatives from over 100 worlds. Many seats remained empty, delegates who had not survived the attack on Harmony Station. Ambassador Thomas stood at the viewport, watching the repair ships working on the damaged remains of the station. 3 Earth Dreadnoughts patrolled nearby, their imposing presence a constant reminder of how the galaxy had changed. The Council will come to order, announced the interim leader. an elder from the Thalassian Federation who had been chosen after High Elder Krell resigned in disgrace. Thomas took his seat at the main table, no longer relegated to the back of the room as he had been for years. Beside him sat Commander Marcus, still bearing wounds from the battle but insistent on attending this critical meeting. "We face an unprecedented crisis," the interim leader began. "The attack by the Void Collective has revealed grave weaknesses in our defense strategies. Their retreat following the loss of their flagship gives us a temporary reprieve, but intelligence suggests they will return with greater numbers." Marcus leaned forward. "Their retreat is tactical, not strategic. The Void Collective has followed this pattern with previous civilizations, testing defenses, gathering intelligence, then returning with overwhelming force." "Previous civilizations?" a council member asked. "You've known about them for how long?" 17 years, Thomas answered. "When our deep space probes first discovered the ruins in the Centauri system, we found evidence of their attacks. Records left by the destroyed civilization warned about the collective. We brought this evidence to the council, and we dismissed it," the interim leader acknowledged, his tentacles drooping in shame. "We labeled it as human paranoia and primitive pattern-seeking." Commander Marcus activated a holographic display showing dozens of star systems. "Our archaeological teams have identified at least 27 civilizations destroyed by the Void over the past 50,000 years. Each time, the pattern is the same. They test, retreat, then return to harvest." And while the council ignored the threat, Thomas continued, "Earth prepared. The Dreadnought program began 16 years ago, built in secret shipyards beyond council monitoring zones." Murmurs filled the room, some of outrage, others of grudging respect. "You violated council treaties," one representative pointed out. "We did," Thomas acknowledged without apology. "And in doing so, we saved your lives." The interim leader raised his appendages for silence. "The time for recriminations is past. We must now decide how to proceed. The Void will return, and even Earth's impressive fleet cannot stand alone against their full force." "We don't intend to stand alone," said a new voice from the doorway. All heads turned to see Fleet Admiral Powell, the commander of Earth's entire defense force. He walked slowly to the center of the room, the assembled delegates parting before him. Unlike Diana, Powell was older, his hair gray, his face bearing the lines of someone who had carried heavy responsibilities for decades. Admiral Diana and the crew of the Thermopylae gave their lives to prevent the Void from learning too much about us. But they will return better prepared, Powell said, his deep voice filling the chamber. When they do, humanity will stand against them. The question is, will you stand with us? The room fell silent. Our intelligence suggests we have 8 months before they return in force, Powell continued. In that time, we can share our technology, train your forces, and build more ships. But we need full cooperation, no more politics, no more treaties that limit our ability to defend ourselves. And what would Earth want in return? Asked the interim leader cautiously. Thomas answered before Powell could speak. Recognition of what should have been acknowledged long ago. Humanity is not your primitive cousin to be patted on the head. We are your equal. More than that, we may be your only hope. Powell nodded and activated another holographic display. It showed massive shipyards orbiting Earth and Mars, where dozens of new dreadnoughts were under construction. We started building these ships to protect ourselves, Powell explained. Now they will protect all of us. But only if you stop seeing us as lesser beings and start seeing us as partners. The council members exchanged glances, centuries of assumptions and prejudices visibly crumbling before the reality of their situation. The interim leader was the first to stand. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally acknowledge Earth as a full and equal member, with all rights and privileges. Further, I propose that Earth lead the unified defense forces against the coming threat. One by one, the other representatives stood in agreement. Thomas felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Not victory, but the beginning of a true alliance. As the session ended, Thomas joined Powell at the viewport. Below them, shuttles ferried survivors and workers between ships. "Will it be enough?" Thomas asked quietly. Powell watched as another dreadnought moved into position. "It has to be," he replied. "Humanity didn't build these ships just to save ourselves. Despite everything, we built them to save everyone." The celebration was over. The galaxy had finally learned what humanity had always known. Peace is won through strength, and strength comes from never forgetting what it means to fight for survival.